For our top story this hour, we are following reports that white supremacists recently arrested in the United States have been accused of traveling to Europe to meet with Nazis. In October, we brought you news of multiple FBI arrests made targeting the so-called Rise Above movement. That throughout the month, the group's leader, Robert Rundo, and 4 other men were detained and slapped with multiple charges, including conspiracy to start a riot. The penalties stem from their involvement in the 2017 Charlottesville violence, which resulted in street fighting and the eventual killing of anti-fascist demonstrator Heather Heyer by a self-identified white supremacist. Now, thanks to the criminal complaint filed against Rundo, we are learning more about the international ties maintained by Rise Above. FBI Special Agent Scott Bierworth writes in the document, quote, "In the spring of 2018, several Rise Above members traveled to Germany, Ukraine, and Italy to celebrate Adolf Hitler's birthday and meet with members of European white supremacy extremist groups." Bierworth says the men spent time with individuals affiliated with the Azov Battalion, which according to Bierworth is, quote, "a paramilitary unit of the Ukrainian National Guard, which is known for its association with neo-Nazi ideology and the use of Nazi symbolism, and which is believed to have participated in training and radicalizing United States-based white supremacy organizations." These revelations are shocking, not just because of what it tells us about the Rise Above movement, but because the FBI is actually claiming neo-Nazi groups in the United States have received training from the Azov Battalion. You can see the flag for the battalion. It's actually cut off in this picture, but you would be seeing a flag which belongs to the group and its resemblance to the Nazi swastika emblem. Now, this is significant because the battalion has played a major role in the U.S.-backed fight against pro-Russian separatists in Ukraine's east. Earlier this year, the Trump administration approved the sale of heavy weapons to Ukraine, sparking fears the equipment could fall into the hands of neo-Nazis. As professor of Russian studies, Stephen Cohen writes at The Nation magazine, quote, "Congressional legislation recently banned Azov from receiving any U.S. military aid, but it is likely to obtain some of the new weapons recently sent to Kiev by the Trump administration due to the country's rampant network of corruption and black markets." With the Azov Battalion in question, we're joined now by RT producer Nebojsa Malic. All right, Neb, what does it tell us about U.S. policy in Ukraine if Washington's allies in that civil war are now, according to the FBI, providing training to white supremacist organizations in the U.S.?
That is just a staggering revelation. Not unexpected, unfortunately, for many of us observers of things in Ukraine since 2014, because it was the neo-Nazi groups that were behind the original Maidan coup in February 2014 that brought the current Ukrainian government into power, and it was entirely backed by the U.S. By the State Department at that time and the U.S. ambassador to the country and so on and so forth. And it was the Europeans who tried to negotiate some sort of transfer of power, and that sort of got trampled in the transaction, which caused many problems between Moscow, Washington, and the European capitals. And it's sort of, we're seeing that legacy dragged out to the present day. And it's really fascinating that the Trump administration actually took a harder line on Ukraine and backing the policy they essentially inherited from Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. And because probably partly due to the entire Russiagate hysteria in the media, because of the whole, oh, you changed the Ukraine platform, no, we didn't, and back and forth. And that ended up being where we are today.
What message should Americans who fight to oppose white supremacy in the United States take away from this development, though? I mean, because I don't feel like they can make the connection between what happens here and what the United States does abroad.
And that's a valid question, because there's always blowback, and there's been a lot of writing on this for years and years and years to comment on the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, for example, as examples of this. But Ukraine is one of those cases where, you know, here's the U.S. trying to, you know, hurt Russia or whatever, and ends up backing up literal Nazis who end up exporting that ideology into the U.S. So essentially all of this U.S. assistance to Ukrainian democracy, whatever, comes back aiding the neo-Nazis in the U.S. It's absurd, and it's a perfect example of blowback.
Quite a few people, though, at the time like yourself, raised this question, saying, look, what is the United States doing back in 2014 supporting groups which are openly affiliated with Nazis?
And we've been getting the same response. We are getting the same response today as we did back then. Shut up, you Russian spy.
That you're Russian propaganda if you make that point.
Exactly. And people would say, well, look at the Nazis in Ukraine. And then the mainstream media would come back, no Nazis in Ukraine. What Nazis? There's no Nazis in Ukraine. Well, and then stuff like this happens.
Apparently this FBI special agent is also a Russian propagandist, Neb.
It seems to be.
This week, a Ukrainian anti-corruption activist died of wounds she sustained in an acid attack which targeted her in late July. How does her death relate to this conversation?
Well, she was a Maidan supporter, but she wasn't a militant from everything that I've heard, and she was attacked as insufficiently patriotic by one of these neo-Nazi groups, because Azov is not the only one of them. I mean, obviously they walk around with the Wolfsangel and the Black Sun on their flag, but there's many, many other groups, and one of the people who was most prominent in this movement made it to be the police minister in the country. I mean, these are not just fringe groups; they're part of the government.
Yeah, I mean, get into how Nazi sympathizers have been emboldened since the coup.
Well, absolutely. I mean, they took over the government practically. The front of the government, the public face, is President Poroshenko, Turchinov, and Yatsenyuk, and all these other people, but who come and go. But the actual law enforcement and force structures of the Ukrainian government have pretty much been in the hands of these extremists from day one of the Maidan, of the coup. And you basically have these militias running completely unchecked throughout the country, beating up people who they believe disagree with them, mobbing newspaper editors, pistol whipping parliamentarians. It's a reign of terror.
And you don't see any of this in the mainstream media?
No, because the official narrative is that Ukraine is a pro-U.S. democracy threatened by evil Russia, and therefore anything goes. And this is just absurd. This is literally producing Nazis.
Well, perhaps these documents will not allow people to deny the fact this is going on anymore. Straight from the mouth of the FBI there, now saying white supremacists in the United States working with Ukrainian Nazis. Nebojsa Malic, thanks so much for coming on.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.